This story was sent to us by a real listener. It happened somewhere in East Asia, maybe in China, Japan, Vietnam, or Korea. They remember it clearly, and after you hear it, you will too. Welcome to Real VNightmare, where real people share the moments they'll never forget. This story was submitted to our channel by the woman who experienced it, Lee May. The memory clings to her like the scent of summer air in a city that never quite cools down. She was only 6 when it happened. The heat of that particular summer in the Guangzhou suburbs forcing her family to relocate, temporarily. Her parents were renovating their home, so the whole family moved into Aunt Zhang's house. Specifically the upper floor. It was cramped but tolerable, and one night the sweltering air became unbearable. That's when Lee May and her mother decided to sleep out in the open space on the rooftop terrace to catch some breeze. At first it was peaceful. The air moved gently across their skin, the concrete still warm beneath them. And Lee May quickly slipped into slumber under the hum of distant traffic. But sometime in the middle of the night, she stirred. A whisper, or maybe just a change in the air, roused her. She blinked and froze. Standing just inches from her was a large, heavy-set man with no shirt, only a pair of short trousers clinging loosely to his round belly. In her sleepy confusion, she wasn't even afraid at first. Children don't always know they're staring into something that doesn't belong in the world of the living. He looked solid, real, alive. But when he leaned closer and said in a voice that didn't belong to this world, "I'm going to take your earrings," something inside her snapped cold. The voice was hollow, like it came from underground, echoing with the kind of emptiness no living man could produce. She turned her face away, desperately hoping he would vanish if she just ignored him. But he moved with her. His shadow loomed closer, and he repeated, "I'm going to take your earrings." Then he did something that would haunt her forever. He lifted the mosquito netting that had been loosely covering her sleeping form and reached in, brushing against her skin. That touch sent a scream bursting from her lungs as she jolted upright, shaking her mother awake. "There's a fat man. He's trying to take my earrings," she cried, pointing toward the shadow. Her mother stared at the empty space with confusion. "There's no one there, sweetheart. It's just a dream. Lie down." But Lee May couldn't sleep. She blinked her eyes open and shut over and over, checking, hoping it was gone. The 3rd or 4th time she looked there, he was again, standing silently beside her. Watching. The same awful voice echoing in her mind. "I'm going to take your earrings." She screamed again, and this time the whole house woke up. Her father, Aunt Zhang, and her 2 older cousins rushed to her side. But no one else could see him. No one. Even as her father scooped her up and carried her inside, the man's ghost seemed to follow. Lee May said he shrank in size, becoming more compact as he slithered closer, keeping his eyes fixed on her like a hunter disappointed at losing prey. Only she could see him. Only she could hear that phrase still buzzing in her ears like a curse. Her father tried to soothe her, rocking her in his arms as she finally slipped into exhausted sleep. The next morning, the adults chalked it up to a bad dream. She was just frightened, her mother insisted. Nothing was really there. But her father wasn't so sure. Quietly, he drove to the ancestral home and returned with a cactus and a pair of dried chicken feet, items commonly used for spiritual protection. He hung them above the rooftop terrace. That night, and every night after the fat man didn't return, Lee May would have left it at that, believing it to be some strange, unexplainable nightmare. Until 16 years later, when she was 22, Aunt Zhang brought it up over tea. "You know, Aunt Zhang said I think you really saw something that night." Lee May looked up, startled. That night I'd argued with your Uncle Zhang, Aunt Zhang continued. So I went upstairs to sleep. I must have dozed off. And I had the weirdest dream. I saw a fat man talking to someone in the corner of the room. All I heard him say was, "Uncle Wang, look, zongzi over there." Zongzi, a traditional Chinese sticky rice dumpling wrapped in bamboo leaves, often offered during festivals or spiritual rituals. And then the fat man replied, "I don't have any money to buy it." That's when I woke up. Uncle Zhang overheard the story and said, "That's probably the spirit of Uncle Wang. He used to own this land before we bought it. Everyone said he loved kids, and he died hungry." Li Mei suddenly understood. So they had known all along. When she was a child and spoke of the ghost, they hadn't dismissed her out of disbelief, but out of protection. They didn't want to scare her. They hoped pretending it wasn't real would be enough to make it go away. Aunt Zhang gave her a soft look and added, "Maybe he just wanted to sell your earrings, buy something to eat." Poor old soul. That same afternoon, Aunt Zhang took her to the market. They bought zongzi and fruit, then set up a small offering table and burned incense for Uncle Wang. A moment of quiet peace settled between them. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum. And let's slip quietly into tonight's story together. The next chapter of Li Mei's strange encounters didn't begin until years later, long after the spirit of Uncle Wang had faded from her thoughts. She had graduated from university and about a month afterward, secured a teaching job at a kindergarten in Foshan. It felt like the perfect place to begin her adult life. New city, new job, fresh energy. The classrooms were bright, the staff friendly, and the children adorable in their oversized backpacks. It should have been a fresh start. But on her first day, while walking past the tiled entrance hall, she was approached by the janitor, a sharp-eyed older woman with rolled-up sleeves and a mop in hand. "Be careful in this school," the woman warned, voice low and knowing, "especially that front hall. It has something." Li Mei blinked, unsure how to respond. The woman just grinned and added, "Sometimes I get so scared I throw my mop and run down the stairs." Li Mei chuckled politely and moved on. It had to be a joke, just a strange sense of humor. Besides, she wasn't some superstitious child anymore. She had grown up. Spirits belonged to stories, nightmares, not classrooms. During her first few weeks, nothing out of the ordinary happened. She was assigned to teach a class in a room not far from the front hall, the very space the janitor had warned her about. Her colleagues teased her lightly. "You'd better make offerings in that room," one of them said with a wink. "If you don't, the ghost might get angry." It became a bit of a running joke. The veteran teachers seemed oddly reverent about the idea, but Li Mei brushed it off. There was no ghost. She would focus on lesson plans, attendance charts, and juice boxes. Not imaginary spirits, until everything started going wrong. The first incident came out of nowhere, the night before her scheduled classroom demonstration. The most important class of her first semester, Li Mei woke up with searing pain in one eye. It throbbed and burned so badly she had to cancel her lesson and take a sick day. She tried to push through the pain, but it took nearly a week before she could see clearly again. Just as she was ready to return and resume her duties, another odd thing happened. On the morning of her rescheduled demonstration, she opened her mouth to speak, and nothing came out. Her voice was gone. No sore throat, no warning, just silence. She had no choice but to cancel again. From there, a string of strange and increasingly frustrating misfortunes followed. Parents of her students began to complain. Not about real problems, but bizarre, trivial things, a child's missing crayon, a scratch that happened at home, or accusations that she looked tired during class. One after another, the complaints built up. They didn't make sense. It felt targeted, as if something had turned against her. Her co-workers noticed too. "It's not normal, one," whispered during a lunch break. "I think you're unlucky." "You really haven't made an offering yet?" another asked, wide-eyed. "I didn't think you guys were serious," Li Mei said, half laughing. "No one's ever that unlucky, not for no reason." "You've probably offended her," they replied. That's when they told her. Years ago, the headmistress of the kindergarten, beloved by the faculty, had died of cancer. But even after her passing, her attachment to the school lingered. She had loved the building so much they said that her spirit stayed behind, watching over it. Several staff claimed to have seen her, sometimes a flash of white moving past a doorway, or the sensation of being watched during early morning hours. Someone even captured a photograph during a school festival, and in the background was a faint silhouette, a woman in white, half-transparent, drifting past the children. Some teachers said she had a mischievous streak. Those who were spiritually sensitive, what they called light aura, were especially affected. They got pressed down in their sleep, caught cold breezes in empty hallways, or forgot things that had just been in their hands. And the front hall, that was where she had spent most of her time while alive, where her desk had been, where her voice had echoed off those tiles. Now it seemed the ghost had turned her attention to Li Mei. That night, after everyone had gone home and the corridors were still, Li Mei walked back to her classroom alone. She placed a small sponge cake and a cup of tea on the desk. She whispered a quiet prayer under her breath. "Miss, I'm new here. I probably made mistakes. I don't mean any disrespect. Please forgive me if I've upset you. I just want to do my job well. Please let me have a peaceful school year." She bowed her head, lit a single stick of incense, and left the room. The change was immediate. From that day forward, nothing went wrong. No sickness, no complaints, no accidents. Her classroom ran smoothly. Her students grew fond of her. And the strange bad luck disappeared as if it had never been there. She taught for a full year without another incident. The cake and tea had done their job. Or maybe it wasn't the offering, but the sincerity behind it. That's seriously creepy. The third major encounter happened in the summer of 2014, during a much-needed break from work. Li Mei had invited her older sister Li Ana and her brother-in-law to travel with her to Lijiang, a charming town known for its mountain views and flower fields. The plan was simple: relax, explore, and take some beautiful photos in the famous lavender gardens. They arrived in the afternoon by coach and checked into a cozy little hotel tucked between winding streets. Once settled, they rented 2 motorbikes. Li Mei rode with her sister, while her brother-in-law followed on his own. The lavender field, according to Google Maps, was just 5 kilometers away. Practically around the corner. The sun was still shining bright when they set off around 3 p.m. Riding in a small caravan, him in the lead, the sisters following close behind. It should have taken them no more than 15 minutes. But something was wrong from the beginning. Barely a minute into the ride, Li Mei glanced to the right and spotted a patch of purple flowers behind a wire fence. That looks a lot like lavender, she thought. But her brother-in-law didn't stop. He just kept driving. She assumed it must be the wrong place. Surely he'd stop if they'd arrived. So they kept going, and going. The road narrowed, fewer houses, fewer signs. The buildings faded into hills, and the traffic behind them disappeared. The city seemed to dissolve. The temperature dropped a few degrees. Time became slippery. A strange silence fell between the 3 of them. No one spoke. They didn't even question the route. They just drove for an hour, then another. The sun began to lower, casting long shadows across the empty road. They had driven for nearly 2 hours, lost in the mist of the mountains. The 5-kilometer trip had become a silent odyssey into nowhere. Li Mei looked around. Something inside her tightened. Wait, what are we doing? She thought. She leaned toward her sister and gently tapped her shoulder. Hey, doesn't this feel strange? Liana blinked rapidly, as if waking from a daze. Yes, it does. But their brother-in-law kept going, eyes fixed ahead, his posture rigid. The road suddenly dipped, revealing what lay just a few meters ahead, a massive drainage tunnel. Long, dark, and mouth-like, carved into the side of the hill. Its opening swallowed the road entirely. There were no lights, no signs, no vehicles. Just a steep black maw in the middle of nowhere. "Anna, go stop him," Li Mei shouted. Her sister didn't hesitate. She revved the throttle, raced forward, and smacked her husband on the back with the flat of her hand. He jerked, gasped, and slammed the brakes. "What the hell?" he shouted. "Do you even know where you're going?" she barked. "You've driven us halfway across the province. You were about to ride straight into that thing." He blinked, looked at the tunnel, looked behind him, then back at her. I don't know. I swear I thought we were just following the map." He looked pale, unsettled, like someone waking up from a half-remembered dream. The three of them stood there for a moment, catching their breath, the motorcycles idling on cracked pavement. Then, without another word, they turned around and retraced their route. It took them only 20 minutes to return to the original road. And there on the left-hand side, exactly where Li Mei had first seen it, the lavender field. Vast, purple, radiant in the fading light. They had passed it right at the start. "Why didn't any of us stop?" her sister asked. "I saw it," Li Mei replied quietly. "But something told me to keep going. I never saw it set her brother-in-law, not even once." They fell silent. It became clear that the two of them, Liana and her husband, had fallen under some kind of veil. Their senses dulled, their awareness hijacked. Only Li Mei had remained aware enough to eventually break free. Something didn't want them to find that lavender field. Or maybe something wanted them to keep driving, straight into the dark. Okay, now it all makes sense. The final story Li Mei shared came not from her own direct experience, but from someone very close to her, her boyfriend John. It happened a little over a year ago, when he had returned from overseeing a construction site on the outskirts of Beijing. He was exhausted that evening, dragging his feet as he entered his room and collapsed onto the bed without even eating dinner. A fever crept over him quickly, making his skin burn and head swim. In the middle of the night, something tickled his foot. John stirred, annoyed. Still half asleep, he flexed his toes and rolled over. But then it happened again. More deliberate this time, almost playful, like small fingers tugging gently at his ankle. He opened his eyes. At the foot of the bed stood a child, or at least something that resembled a child. Its face was scrunched and leathery, the features grotesquely compressed like a monkey's. Its skin was dry and pale, and on its head sat a ridiculous hat. Soft, furry, with animal ears poking out like something a toddler might wear on a winter day. The spirit held his foot in both hands, lifting it slowly and wiggling it side to side. As if amused, John tried to sit up, tried to yell. Nothing worked. His limbs were paralyzed. His voice locked inside his throat. Panic flared through him. Every part of his body screamed to move, but he was trapped, locked in a suffocating sleep paralysis. His breath hitched, sweat poured down his temples. The childlike spirit stared at him with empty eyes. Then John, through sheer force of will, summoned a thought. Not just fear, but anger. "If I break free, I swear I'll beat the hell out of you." As soon as that threat formed in his mind, the creature stopped. Its head tilted as though listening. Then in a blink, it vanished. and with it the invisible force holding John's body disappeared. He shot up in bed, panting, heart racing. The room was empty. The only sound was the ticking of the electric fan near the window. The next morning, John told his mother what had happened. He expected disbelief or a nervous chuckle. Instead, she nodded. "Oh, that thing, I've seen it before." John froze. "What do you mean I see it all the time?" she said matter-of-factly. "It plays with Ellie's toys. You know your niece. Lee May's niece." Ellie was the youngest in the household and often played in the living room. Her toy box was always overflowing with dolls and colorful plastic creatures. According to John's mother, the spirit often sat near the toy corner, fiddling with stuffed animals and sometimes even hiding dolls under the couch. "I've gotten used to it," she added. "I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was already here when we moved in. Or maybe it came with the land." That last part unsettled John more than anything. Because if the spirit wasn't attached to a person, but to a place, it meant that no one could truly be safe from it. It might stay, linger, watch, wait. That was the last story Lee May shared with us. It didn't have a climactic exorcism, no ritual, no protective warding, no genya was ever used. Sometimes she said the ghosts don't want to be fought. They don't even want to scare you. They just exist. In the background. Part of the house. Part of the air. You might not notice them, but they notice you. And that's what makes it worse. So now let's step back. Breathe. Let the stillness return to your room. The kind of calm that comes not from silence, but from gentle reassurance. The kind that hums softly through the walls, reminding you that it's just a story, just a memory shared from someone else's life. Lee May's journey through the unseen wasn't about battles with the supernatural. It was about coexisting with it. Her childhood fear, her unexplained misfortunes, the chilling drive into the unknown. All of them were reminders that not everything invisible is harmless. But not everything invisible wants to hurt us either. Sometimes a spirit is hungry, sometimes it's lonely, and sometimes it's just confused. In her world, ghosts didn't always howl. They watched. They followed. They brushed past your skin while you slept. They whispered about earrings, hid behind classroom walls, or tugged gently at your foot with fingers too small and too cold to be human. But each time she found a way through, by recognizing the presence, respecting it, and sometimes offering nothing more than a moment of empathy. So tonight, as the lights dim, as your room grows quiet, listen to the silence. Do you hear it? The soft static beneath your thoughts. It's probably just your imagination. Probably. And if something tugs at your foot in the middle of the night, just remember the horror stories of the East never truly end.
That was their story. Maybe you believe it, maybe you don't. But tonight, when the lights go out, just remember, not every silence means you're alone. New true horror stories every week. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have a story of your own, send it to us. You're not the only one who's seen things.